My beloved child. Stop scrolling for a moment. Do not move past this message. There is something here that was meant to find you at exactly this moment, and although you may think this is just another video, another message, another voice among thousands, there is a reason your eyes stopped here. There is a reason your spirit became still. There is a reason your heart suddenly feels as though it is waiting for something it cannot explain. Because today, I am revealing something that many people have secretly wondered about you. Something they noticed long before they ever spoke about it. Something that left them confused. Something that left them staring. Something that left them questioning everything they thought they understood. My child, your looks and your age have shocked a lot of people because there is something about you that does not make sense to them. No matter how they try to explain it, they cannot. No matter how logical they are, they cannot. No matter how much they observe you, they still walk away puzzled. And the reason goes deeper than appearance. Far deeper. You have spent years believing people only notice the surface. You assumed they only saw your face. Your smile. Your eyes. Your presence. But what many people never told you is that when they looked at you, they felt something they could not put into words. Something unusual. Something almost impossible to describe. They would look at you and think, there is no way that is their age. Then they would look again. And again. And somehow their confusion would only grow stronger. Because your age and your energy have never matched in the eyes of others. Some people thought you looked younger. Others thought you seemed wiser than someone your age should be. Some felt both at the same time. And that contradiction is what unsettled them. You see, most people move through life carrying exactly what the world expects them to carry. Their energy matches their years. Their experiences shape their appearance in predictable ways. Their spirit follows familiar patterns. But you were never designed to fit predictable patterns. Long before this moment, long before the challenges you faced, long before the disappointments that tested your faith, something extraordinary was placed inside your spirit. A light. A frequency. A presence. And even when people cannot see it directly, they feel it. That is why complete strangers sometimes stare longer than they realize. That is why certain people become curious about you without understanding why. That is why some individuals remember your face years after meeting you only once. Because they are not remembering your appearance. They are remembering your energy. And energy leaves a deeper imprint than appearance ever could. But there is another layer to this mystery. A layer very few people understand. Many assume that aging happens only through the body. They believe years are measured by calendars. By birthdays. By numbers. By time itself. Yet heaven measures things differently. Heaven sees the condition of the soul. And your soul carries something unusual. Something rare. Something that has survived storms that would have broken many others. My child, do you know what happens when a soul survives what should have destroyed it? Do you know what happens when someone keeps moving forward after heartbreak? After betrayal? After rejection? After loneliness? After seasons where nobody truly understood what they were carrying? Something remarkable begins to happen. Strength starts replacing weariness. Wisdom begins replacing fear. Grace begins replacing bitterness. And eventually the soul develops a beauty that cannot be manufactured. A beauty that cannot be purchased. A beauty that cannot be imitated. That beauty begins shining through the eyes. Through the voice. Through the presence. Through every part of a person's existence. And people notice it. Even if they never understand what they are seeing. This is why some people have spent years trying to figure you out. You may not know it. You may never hear their conversations. But discussions about you have happened behind closed doors. Questions have been asked. Observations have been shared. People have looked at your photos and disagreed about your age. People have met you in person and been surprised. People have heard your story and expected one version of you, only to encounter something entirely different. And every time it happened, the mystery grew. Because there is something about you that does not fit the normal expectations of this world. Yet the greatest surprise is not what others see. The greatest surprise is what they feel. Many individuals expected your appearance to be your most memorable quality. But after spending time around you, they discovered something else. Something stronger. Something impossible to ignore. Your spirit. Your resilience. Your quiet strength. The way you continue standing after circumstances tried to knock you down. The way you keep showing kindness when life has given you reasons to become cold. The way you keep believing when others would have surrendered. That is what leaves people speechless. Not your age. Not your face. Not your appearance. But the invisible force behind all of it. Because whether you realize it or not, you carry evidence of survival. And survival creates a different kind of beauty. One that grows stronger over time. One that deepens rather than fades. One that becomes more powerful with every season. There are people who secretly envy this about you. Not because they want your life. Not because they understand your journey. But because they can sense a confidence inside you that was earned through struggle. A confidence that cannot be taught. A confidence that cannot be copied. A confidence that emerges only after someone walks through fire and refuses to let the fire define them. Yet there is something else you must understand. Some of the same people who admire this quality have also misunderstood it. They assumed your strength meant your life was easy. They assumed your calmness meant you never suffered. They assumed your smile meant you never cried. They assumed your appearance reflected a life without hardship. But heaven knows the truth. The truth is that many of your greatest battles happened in silence. Many of your hardest nights happened when nobody was watching. Many of your deepest prayers were spoken when nobody knew you were struggling. And still you continued. Still you rose. Still you moved forward. That is why your presence carries a different weight. Because it was forged through experience. Not comfort. Not convenience. Experience. And every challenge added another layer to the person you were becoming. There were moments when you questioned yourself. Moments when you wondered if anyone noticed your efforts. Moments when you wondered if your sacrifices mattered. Moments when you felt invisible. But my child, nothing was wasted. Not a single tear. Not a single lesson. Not a single setback. Everything became part of the transformation. Everything became part of the story heaven was writing through your life. And now people are beginning to notice the result. Even those who cannot explain it. Even those who do not understand it. Even those who once underestimated you. Especially those who once underestimated you. Because some individuals believed time would diminish you. They expected disappointment to harden you. They expected hardship to drain your light. They expected pressure to break your spirit. Instead, they watched you become stronger. They watched you become wiser. They watched you become more radiant. And deep down, they could not understand how it happened. What they never realized is that your growth was happening where they could not see it. While they were measuring appearances, heaven was strengthening character. While they were counting years, heaven was developing wisdom. While they were making assumptions, heaven was preparing revelations. That is why the contrast feels so powerful now. People expected one outcome. Yet they witnessed another. People expected decline. Yet they witnessed growth. People expected exhaustion. Yet they witnessed renewal. And this contradiction has left many people shocked. Because it challenges everything they thought they knew. But there is a hidden reason this message is finding you today. A reason bigger than appearance. Bigger than age. Bigger than perception. Because what has surprised people until now is only the beginning. The real revelation has not happened yet. There is something approaching your life. A chapter. A moment. A connection. An opportunity. Something that will cause people to look at you differently than ever before. Not because your appearance changes. Not because your age changes. But because your purpose becomes impossible to ignore. The same individuals who once underestimated you will suddenly see something they missed. The same individuals who made assumptions will realize how wrong they were. The same individuals who thought they understood your story will discover they only knew a fraction of it. And when that moment arrives, many things will begin making sense. Pieces that once felt disconnected will connect. Questions that lingered for years will receive answers. Doors that remained closed will begin opening. And people who doubted your path will quietly reconsider everything. Yet before that chapter arrives, there is one final truth you need to hear. A truth that many never learn. Your value was never connected to age. Your worth was never connected to appearance. Your destiny was never connected to human approval. The reason people notice something unusual about you is not because you are trying to impress them. It is because your spirit carries evidence of transformation. And transformation leaves traces. It leaves marks that cannot be hidden. It leaves signs that sensitive souls recognize immediately. It leaves a presence that enters a room before words are spoken. And the closer you move toward your purpose, the stronger that presence becomes. Which brings me to the revelation that has been hidden until now. There is someone whose attention has been fixed on you longer than you realize. Someone who has been trying to understand why you affect them the way you do. Someone who noticed what others noticed. But unlike everyone else, they kept looking deeper. They kept asking questions. They kept searching for answers. Because every explanation they found felt incomplete. And recently, something happened. Something unexpected. Something they never anticipated. A piece of information reached them. A truth. A realization. A discovery connected to you. The moment they learned it, everything they believed began changing. The image they carried of you started shifting. The assumptions they once held started collapsing. And now they stand at the edge of a decision that could change far more than they realize. But what they discovered, and why it has shaken them so deeply, is a story for the next part. They sat in silence long after that realization reached them. Not because they had nothing to think about, but because they suddenly had too much. For so long, they believed they had already figured you out. They believed they understood the kind of person you were. They believed they had placed you into a category that made sense to them. Yet the truth has a way of arriving when people least expect it. And when it arrives, it often destroys every comfortable assumption standing in its path. That is exactly what happened. What they discovered was not some dramatic secret. It was not a hidden scandal. It was not a shocking mistake. It was something far more powerful. They discovered that the version of you they carried in their mind was incomplete. And the moment they realized that, everything began changing. You see, many people only know the visible parts of another person's story. They see smiles but not struggles. They see confidence but not battles. They see success but not sacrifice. They see strength but not survival. And because of this, they create narratives that feel true even when they are missing half the story. That is what happened here. For a long time, this person looked at you and thought they understood why you carried yourself the way you did. They thought they knew why people were drawn toward your energy. They thought they knew why your presence seemed different. But then they learned something. Something that forced them to revisit every conclusion they had made. And once that process began, it became impossible to stop. Suddenly they remembered conversations. Moments. Expressions. Small details they had ignored before. Details that now seemed significant. Details that now appeared connected. The puzzle pieces started moving. The picture started changing. And the more they thought about it, the more unsettled they became. Not because they feared you. Not because they disliked what they discovered. But because they realized they had underestimated you. Far more than they ever imagined. My child, there is a unique discomfort that people experience when they discover they were wrong about someone. Especially when that someone possesses qualities they failed to recognize. Especially when that someone quietly carried strengths they never noticed. Especially when that someone continued growing while everyone else was looking in another direction. This person found themselves facing that discomfort. And it was impossible to ignore. Because suddenly they saw your resilience differently. They saw your kindness differently. They saw your calmness differently. Even your silence began carrying new meaning. Things they once dismissed now seemed important. Things they once overlooked now seemed impossible to overlook. And with every realization came another question. How much else had they missed? That question began echoing inside them. Again and again. How much else had they missed? Because once someone realizes they misunderstood one part of a person, they begin wondering whether they misunderstood everything. That is where this journey led them. And the deeper they looked, the more surprised they became. They began noticing patterns. Patterns that had existed for a very long time. Patterns others noticed too. For example, they started recognizing how people reacted to you. Not just acquaintances. Not just friends. Everyone. The reactions were strangely consistent. People remembered you. People talked about you after you left. People wondered about you. People found themselves revisiting conversations they had with you. At first these observations seemed insignificant. But when viewed together, they revealed something bigger. Something impossible to ignore. Your impact on people has always been greater than you realized. Far greater. You may not see it because you live inside your own experience. You do not witness the discussions that happen after you leave a room. You do not hear the thoughts people keep to themselves. You do not know how often your name enters conversations when you are not present. Yet it happens. More often than you think. And this person recently became aware of that reality. That awareness changed everything. Because they started asking themselves a difficult question. If so many people are affected by your presence, what is it they are sensing? What is it they are feeling? What is it they recognize before they even understand it? The answer frightened them. Not in a negative way. In an awakening way. Because they slowly began understanding that your influence comes from something deeper than appearance. Deeper than charm. Deeper than personality. It comes from authenticity. And authenticity is becoming increasingly rare in this world. People spend years creating versions of themselves they hope others will accept. Masks. Performances. Carefully managed images. Yet you carry something different. Even when you are imperfect. Even when you are uncertain. Even when you are struggling. There is still something genuine about you. And genuine energy affects people more than perfect appearances ever can. This realization hit them harder than they expected. Because they suddenly understood why forgetting you had been so difficult. They suddenly understood why memories involving you seemed unusually vivid. They suddenly understood why certain moments involving you refused to disappear. The answer was simple. You were never as ordinary as they convinced themselves you were. And that truth has become impossible for them to escape. But there is another layer. A deeper layer. One they have only recently begun uncovering. Because while they were reevaluating their understanding of you, something else was happening simultaneously. They were reevaluating themselves. That is what people rarely discuss. When someone discovers they underestimated another person, they are often forced to confront their own limitations. Their own assumptions. Their own blind spots. And that process can be uncomfortable. This person started questioning why they misjudged you in the first place. Why they accepted surface-level explanations. Why they failed to look deeper. Why they overlooked signs that now seem obvious. Those questions led them inward. And the answers they found were not easy. They discovered fears. Insecurities. Old wounds. Past disappointments. They realized some of the judgments they placed upon you were actually reflections of battles happening inside themselves. Battles they never fully healed. Battles they never fully understood. And when that realization arrived, everything became even more emotional. Because now this was no longer just about you. Now it was about growth. Transformation. Awakening. For both of you. My child, there are moments in life when heaven places mirrors in front of people. Not physical mirrors. Spiritual mirrors. People who reveal truths. People who expose hidden beliefs. People who challenge assumptions. People who unknowingly trigger transformation. You have been that mirror for more individuals than you realize. Including this person. Without trying. Without planning. Without even knowing. Your existence forced them to see things they would rather have ignored. And while that process was uncomfortable, it was also necessary. Because growth rarely begins with comfort. Growth begins with revelation. And revelation has arrived. That is why their thoughts keep returning to you. That is why their perspective keeps evolving. That is why the story is still unfolding. Yet what happened next surprised even them. After all the reflection. After all the realizations. After all the emotional processing. They encountered another piece of information. A detail they had never heard before. A detail connected directly to your journey. The moment they heard it, they felt something shift. Something powerful. Something undeniable. Suddenly the admiration they felt became mixed with respect. Deep respect. The kind of respect that cannot be manufactured. The kind that emerges when someone finally understands the true cost of another person's growth. Because they learned about obstacles you faced. Challenges you endured. Moments you survived. And for the first time, they understood that the person standing before them today was not created by luck. You were created through perseverance. Through endurance. Through choices made during difficult seasons. Through courage shown when nobody was applauding. That realization changed how they saw everything. Even your victories. Especially your victories. Because now they understood what those victories actually cost. And once a person understands the cost, appreciation grows. Respect grows. Curiosity grows. Connection grows. That is exactly what is happening. Every day they understand a little more. Every day another piece falls into place. Every day the image becomes clearer. Yet strangely enough, the clearer the image becomes, the more questions appear. Questions about the future. Questions about possibilities. Questions about where all of this is leading. Questions they never expected to ask. And that is where things become truly interesting. Because recently they reached a conclusion they never thought they would reach. A conclusion they resisted for a very long time. A conclusion they tried to explain away. Ignore. Dismiss. Rationalize. Yet despite every effort, the conclusion remained. It refused to disappear. It continued returning. Again. And again. And again. Until eventually they could no longer deny it. And what they concluded has the potential to change everything. Not tomorrow. Not instantly. But soon. Very soon. Because once a person reaches a truth they can no longer ignore, action eventually follows. That is the natural order of things. Awareness creates movement. Understanding creates decisions. Realization creates change. And change is approaching. Closer than it appears. Closer than either of you realize. But before any action can occur, one final realization must happen. One final piece must fall into place. One final truth must reveal itself. That truth is already moving toward the surface. Already making its way into the light. Already preparing to emerge. And when it does, the decision waiting in front of them will become unavoidable. The choice they have been postponing will demand an answer. The emotions they have been analyzing will require expression. The future they have been imagining will require courage. And what happens after that will become the turning point neither of you saw coming. But that moment has not arrived yet. Not quite. Because something significant is about to happen first. Something that will force them to confront what they truly feel. Something that will remove the last remaining excuse. Something that will reveal whether they are ready to step forward or remain where they are. And when that moment arrives, the outcome may shock everyone involved. Including them. That revelation. And the event that triggers it is where the next part begins.